It's Six Nations Fallow Week, but luckily we got some URC action to keep us entertained. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. We have a full fixture list this weekend in the URC and some fairly exciting games. I know a lot of people will be kind of, taking a break maybe from rugby, all the excitement from the Six Nations, but I'm a rugby tragic, so I'm going to be watching as many of the games as I can. So what we're going to do as usual, go down through the fixtures list, talk about, how teams have been doing so far this season, that kind of thing, and make a prediction for the game. So I'm going to start with the Friday fixtures. The first one is Cardiff Rugby versus Leinster, 7 o'clock kickoff at the Cardiff Arms Park. And if we look at, how these teams have been doing recently, Cardiff, they've won 4 of their last 7. Leinster have won 7 out of 7. And during that period, basically both, the teams have kind of passed each other in the table. Cardiff, dropping down out of kind of the top 2 and 3, and Leinster making their way up there as the closest challenger to Glasgow at the minute, at least. So Cardiff at the minute now are in 5th and Leinster in 2nd. And Cardiff's run, beat Edinburgh, then Zebre, then loss against the Scarlets, then a win against Dragons, loss against Ospreys, win against Benetton, and then a loss against Ulster. A lot of those, 1 score margin either way. Leinster then, their run, they beat Zebre, Dragons, Ulster, Munster, Connacht again, and then Edinburgh. So decent run for them. They're getting them back up into the reckoning there at the top of the table. You would imagine that Leinster, even though they've plenty of players in the Ireland squad at the minute, that they'll have, a very strong team still going over to Cardiff. And we have to go back to, I think it's 2022, the last time that Cardiff actually beat Leinster, and that was 29-27. The last few years, Leinster have won by at least a couple of scores. So looking at that evidence there, and again, the fact that I think, Leinster's team going over is going to be fairly strong, and they've only had this game to prepare for, same as every other team. But I do think it's going to be a Leinster win. So that's what I'm going to back in that one. Also on Friday then, we have Edinburgh versus Scarlets. This one is a 7:45 kickoff. It's at the Hive Stadium. It's kind of weird actually that the Cardiff game is kicking off at 7, because 7:45 is I'm not going to say traditional, because the URC's only been around a while, but kind of the regular kickoff time for Friday night games. But these two then, you got Edinburgh at the minute are in 13th place in the table, and Scarlets in 15th. And if Scarlets were to win, they could leapfrog Edinburgh and move themselves up the table a little bit. Edinburgh could get themselves kind of back in the mix for the playoff places with, end of this round, we basically got 1/3 of the regular season left. So if they want to make a move, they got to start making it soon. And Edinburgh, not in great form. They've won 2 of the last 7. Scarlets have won 3 and drawn 1 of their last 7. Edinburgh on their run then lost to Cardiff, win against Ospreys, then losses against Glasgow, 2 back-to-back. Then they beat Benetton by a point, lost to the Bulls, and then lost to Leinster. Scarlets, they started their run losing to the Sharks, then back-to-back wins, one against Glasgow and then Cardiff, then back-to-back losses against Ospreys and Dragons. Then they beat Ulster, and then they got a draw against Benetton. So mixed, certainly for them. But you still have to say, out of these two, they're in the better form of the two. But something I think that is going to have a big kind of maybe impact on the winner of this is that recently when these two teams have played each other in the URC, the home team has won, and I'm going to go with that as well. I'm going to back the home team. I'm going to go for an Edinburgh win in that one. So those are our Friday night games. On to Saturday then, we've got the Lions versus the Stormers. This is a 12:30 kickoff. It's at Ellis Park. And if we look at the form of the teams, so the Lions, they've won 4 of the last 7 and have a draw in there as well. Stormers have won 5 of the last 7, but on a 2-game losing streak. So they definitely want to break that because they've fallen back into the clutches of the other teams in the URC, having been kind of the runaway leaders at the start of the season. And the Lions run also included a game that was played, during the Six Nations period. When was it? It was it was last weekend, and they beat the Sharks in that one. So they've moved up. At the moment, the Stormers are in 3rd place, and the Lions are in 7th place. So into the playoff places, and at the moment they're kind of in that gap between Munster, who were kind of that top 6 had a fair gap on the rest of the league, but Lions are kind of bridging that at the minute between Munster and the Bulls. So Lions in their run, they beat Ulster, then the Bulls lost to the Stormers, they won against the Sharks, lost to Ospreys, lost to the Bulls, and then they beat the Sharks, as I said last week. The Stormers, their run then, to beat Zebre, Benetton, Munster, Lions, and then the Bulls, and then back-to-back losses. One against the Sharks, and then the Sharks again. So the Sharks beat them 2 in a row, and the Sharks looked like they were maybe on a bit of a roll, but the Lions put a stop to that. And basically the winner of the Lions and the Sharks was going to end up in the playoff spots. It was the Lions that came out on top in that one. But will they come out on top in this one? That's a bit of a tighter call, I think. Again, this fixture tends to favour the home team. The last time that the home team didn't win was back in October 2023. The Lions 33, Stormers 35 in that one. And a lot of the recent meetings have it's been one score in it. But as I said, for the most part, the home team have won. But 3 of those, the last 4 games, all 4 have been won by the home team. But 3 of those games have been the Stormers at home. So not as much of a of a pool of Lions wins at home. But I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go for the Lions in this one. I think, this season their performances have been a lot better at home than they have been, in South Africa and at home compared to up in Europe. Like, they've had some good away wins in South Africa. They've had some really good home wins and home performances as well. So I'm going to go for the Lions to win that one. Every chance, though, certainly that the Stormers could, kickstart their season again and kind of get back up there, being competitive near the top of the league. Next, then, we have another South African derby. It's Vodacom Bulls versus Hollywoodbets Sharks, 3:00 kickoff. All these times, by the way, are Irish times, so check your local listings. This one is at Loftus Versfeld. And if we look at the form of the teams, so we've got, the Bulls, they've won 3 of the last 7, but they've won the last 2 on the bounce. Sharks have won 4 of the last 7, but they're coming off the back of that loss to the Lions. So the Bulls in their sequence beat Connacht, then 4 losses on the bounce against Glasgow, then Lions, then Sharks, and then the Stormers. and then they had wins against Edinburgh and the Lions. And then the Sharks, they'd win against Scarlets, loss against Connacht, win against the Bulls, loss against the Lions, win against the Stormers, win against the Stormers again, and then that loss against the Lions last week. So, there's a couple of things in play here, and one is the fact that the Sharks, they had the game against the Lions last week. Yes, they lost, but at least they had a game, so they have that in their legs. And the other one is that the Sharks have been on this kind of this run where they're not very consistent, but they haven't really had a losing streak the way the Bulls did. And I think the break for the Bulls probably came to the wrong time. They were finding a bit of form, with those 2 wins. And I think for them, they would have liked to have gone straight into another couple of games, to take advantage of that, especially when, they're moving back up the table. They're 8th place at the minute, and the Sharks are down at 10th. So the winner of this is going to end up in the playoffs, and for the moment at least, and the loser will be out of those top 8 positions. So looking at things at the minute, it's kind of tough to pick. Like, I've got this inkling that the Sharks are going to do it, but I really want to back the Bulls. And I actually got my Bulls jerseys recently. I actually got 2. I got home and away. It took 2.5 months to arrive from South Africa because DHL messed it up. Or not DHL. What's the other one? UPS. That's it. UPS messed it up. But I don't know why, but something is telling me Sharks are going to win. So I'm going to go with my gut on this one. I'm going to say a Sharks win there. Okay, on to the next one then. It's Connacht versus Glasgow Warriors. It's also on at 3 o'clock at the Dexcomp Stadium. And, this is going to be a real test for Stuart Lancaster and, that ambition that he has to make Connacht more consistent. Going against Glasgow, yes, they're missing a lot of players away with Scotland at the minute, but still got some fairly decent players there. Like we've seen, we saw before the Six Nations, some really good young players, getting a go out there. The likes of Seb Sebastian, looking really good at hooker. And then you got Gregor Hiddleston is still there as well. For some reason, he's not fancied to be in the Scotland squad. For me, he absolutely should be there. So hooker, certainly they're going to be good, but they've got a decent squad, and that's part of the reason I think why Glasgow have really improved in recent years, is because they're no longer just relying on the kind of the frontline star players to perform. That the standards have gone to the rest of the squad as well. And yeah, I think it's going to be good performance by them. My head is saying Glasgow are going to win, but I'm going to go with my heart on this one, and I'm going to go for a Connacht win. But before we do that, well, we've done that, but before we move away, should I say, let's have a look at the form of the two teams. So, we've got, Connacht at the minute are down in 12th place, really struggling. Glasgow, top of the table. They've done so well to overhaul the Stormers. Now, it's Leinster to kind of, keeping, at bay. And yeah, again, head says Glasgow absolutely should win this one, and I shouldn't be backing Connacht at all, but for some reason, I'm going to go with my heart. But Connacht only won 2 of the last 7. Lost against Munster. They beat the Sharks. Then losses against the Dragons, Ulster, Leinster, and then Leinster again. Then they beat Zebre. Glasgow, by contrast, won 6 of the last 7. So they beat the Bulls. A loss against the Scarlets, which was crazy. They lost 23-0, and don't know what happened to them there. Then they beat Edinburgh. Edinburgh again. beat Zebre again, and then they beat Munster. So, really good run for them. And it probably will continue at the Dexcom on Saturday. But again, for whatever weird reason, I'm going to go for Connacht in that one, but I won't be surprised if I'm wrong. Okay, so next then we have Munster versus Zebre. This is a 5:30 kickoff at Thomond Park. And, we have Munster at the minute in 6th place. Zebre have fallen back down to the bottom of the league because they've lost 9 on the bounce now, having won the first 2 games in the league. And yeah, they're kind of struggling at the minute. Performances haven't been terrible, but they just don't seem to have that little bit extra to get them over the line for wins in certain games. And looking at the let me find there we go, there's the form. So Munster, not great form themselves. Like they were up there at towards the pointy end of the league, and they're at risk at the minute of kind of slipping back into the clutches of the chasing pack, down in 6th. But they have 3 wins from the last 7, and they had a win against Connacht, then a loss against the Stormers, then a win against Ospreys, and then lost to Leinster, lost to Ulster. They beat the Dragons, and then they lost to Glasgow. Zebre, 7 defeats on the bounce. I said it's actually 9, but we're only looking at the last 7. So they lost to Leinster, then Cardiff, lost to Benetton again, lost to Glasgow again, and then they lost to Connacht last time out. So with this one, Munster, they've, generally, recently, they would have felt they had a decent record against Zebre, apart from like the last time the 2 teams played, was like 2024, Zebre 42, Munster 33, and, basically on the back of, that result. I think that was when, what's his name? Oh, it's gone out of my head now. The old coach. Why am I blanking on? Let me look it up. It's I tell you, I'm just getting too old for remembering stuff. Oh, it's not even giving me the right thing, but it just came into my head. Graham Rowntree, of course. I'm pretty sure that was around when Graham Rowntree left. I'm not sure whether it was a direct result of that result, but I'm pretty sure it was around that time that he left. But yeah, Munster, they're at home this time, so at least you would expect them to be better. They don't have like a whole heap of players away, especially from the pack with Ireland at the minute either. So they should be able to pick a fairly strong team. Now I'm not sure on the numbers, but I suspect that Zebre might have actually more players away with Italy than Munster do with Ireland at the minute. So for that one, I'm going to predict a Munster win. Okay. Now let's move to the next one, and we got Dragons versus Benetton. So wearing my Dragons jersey, hopefully give them a bit of luck. 5:30 kickoff, and is at Rodney Parade. And Dragons, they've a little bit of resurgence from them, and Benetton, haven't been having the best season, certainly, but they're kind of there or thereabouts, as they normally are, kind of, towards or close enough to the playoff spots. And both teams actually have identical records in the last 7, so 2 wins and a draw out of the last 7 for both teams. Dragons, their sequence: draw against Ospreys, then they lose to Leinster, beat Connacht, lose to Cardiff, they beat Scarlets, and then they lost to Munster, and then Ospreys. Benetton, in their run, lost to the Stormers, lost to Ulster, then wins against Zebre, back-to-back, so 2 wins there. Then they lose to Edinburgh, they lose to Cardiff, and then a draw against the Scarlets. So with this one, I think it's going to be tight. And I think, Dragons, again, another team that don't have a heap of players away with Wales at the minute. Like, in, I think it's Aaron Wainwright, right? Like he's going to be a big miss, obviously, but they've still got the likes of Rio Dyer there, and other players that maybe will want to kind of, show Steve Tandy that, maybe I'm worth a shot if you have an injury or something. So that certainly could play a part in things. And Benetton obviously have a big contingent away with Italy. And given that, I think it's going to be closer than certainly recent years would say in terms of the performance of these teams. I think the closest that Dragons have come in recent years, certainly back to 2022 when they drew 30 in all. And, I think last year Benetton won by 10 points. And then, Benetton kind of winning at home fairly handily. So, it's a strange one. And, I always say I'm not going to predict draws because I think it's kind of just sitting on the fence a little bit too much. But it feels like if there's going to be a draw this weekend, there's probably going to be this game. But again, I'm not going to predict a draw. So because of that, I'm going to go for the Dragons to win. Okay, and then the final game of the round, Ospreys versus Ulster, 7:45 kickoff, is at the Electric Brewery Field. And, with this one here, we have Ospreys at the minute are all the way up to 9th, which is brilliant when you think that they were bottom of the table at one point. And then Ulster up there in 4th place. So it would be a big scalp, I think, for Ospreys to take if they could beat Ulster, keeps them in the mix, because of the teams that are playing each other, like the Bulls are playing the Sharks, etc. It's likely if they do win that they're actually going to be move up into that top 8 as well, depending on couple of results around them, but there's a decent chance at least to move up there. Ulster, if they lose, they're going to be losing ground, I think, on the teams above them as well. The likes of Glasgow. Well, like Glasgow probably, as I said, Glasgow probably are going to win this weekend, even though I'm not predicting them to win because I'm stupid like that. just a bit too loyal maybe to the Irish teams. But you've got Leinster playing Cardiff, so whoever wins that, if Ulster were to lose, Ulster are going to lose ground on them. And then possibly, the Stormers as well. The Stormers pick up a win, then, and then if Munster win as well, Ulster could find themselves dropping down to 6th place and actually looking over the shoulder. So, yes, I feel like, for a lot of the teams up there near the top, it's kind of a big weekend. Some movement could really be happening, but in their last 7, so Ospreys, they've won 3 and drawn 2, and Ulster have won 4 of their 7. So Ospreys in their sequence, they drew against Dragons, then they lost against Edinburgh, lost to Munster, they beat Scarlets, they beat Cardiff, drew against the Lions, and then they beat the Dragons. So actually unbeaten in the last 4 games. Ulster lost to Lions, beat Benetton, they lost to Leinster, beat Connacht, beat Munster, then they lost to Scarlets, and then they beat Cardiff. So, it's going to be close one, I think, this one. Now, I think on seasonal form, you would say Ulster should come out with a win, but more recently, you can see that the Ospreys' form is actually better. And, this is another one of these games where the home team has been winning recently. The last 4 meetings, the home team have won. The generally, like Ulster, when they're playing at Ravenhill, would win by a fairly big margin. Like, they won by 24 points last season, and then by 30 points 3 seasons ago. And Ospreys, by contrast, have won 1917 2 seasons ago, and then 1913 4 seasons ago. But still, they've won both of those games, and given all the evidence, it's kind of again pointing towards an Ospreys win. And again, kind of my Irish instincts are saying, back Ulster in this one, but I'm actually gonna, for once, I don't know why, I'm gonna go against my Irish instincts, even though I'm gonna be absolutely cheering for Ulster, but I'm gonna go for an Ospreys win in that one. Okay, so those are our 8 games for the weekend, and I always say is that teams, when it comes to the end of the season, you're going to see teams scrambling around for, we need to win this game with a bonus point to potentially qualify for the knockout stages as well. But it's generally teams that do well in these periods, that end up making, whether it's getting home semi-finals, like home routes through the knockout stages, or qualifying for the Champions Cup and the knockouts as well. It's generally teams who in these kind of weeks that pick up the points have a much better chance of actually being in those positions. So yeah, I think it's albeit maybe not the most glamorous week of the URC, but for me certainly an important one.